Good. 28 in the meeting room, yes. So anybody else in the room going to vote on behalf of your association? Anybody else? No? Can anyone? Otherwise, is on the yes. And would you be able to close the doors?
Absolutely. Exciting what we are.
Nice, Gabor. Look at Gabor. Love it.
See Gabor?
Yes. Good morning.
Good. So anybody who wants a coffee right now would be good. So we don't have the sound afterward, okay? If you can bring me one, I certainly would appreciate it. So.
Who wants a coffee?
Me.
Your president.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jampa.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Bonjour.
Good evening. Good morning.
Good evening.
우리는 그때부터 해야 되겠네. 예. 어디? 음속으로 돼 있구나. 아, 됐어.
Parfait. Là, Philippe, on va faire son login, peut-être que tu vas tu l'aides avec la fermer de son. Donc, ça
Nobody else?
You only have two hands.
Oh.
Merci beaucoup. To recover.
Anne, tu vas recevoir une demande d'instruction pour feu d'éthique. Non.
Pardon?
Philippe va s'inscrire pour être capable de participer durant la réunion ici pour recevoir une demande de.
Il devrait avoir dans ses courriels son code, je les ai renvoyés ce matin.
Ouais,
Oui, mais j'ai
son-
changé d'adresse
c'est parce que c'est un différent email, parce que c'est pas sécurisé pour lui. Mais si tu votes pas, c'est pas nécessaire. C'est juste parce qu'il doit voter à travers le Zoom. Tu vas pouvoir écouter ici. Je vais demander à Anne que te l'envoie. Parce que je sais pas le...
Quelle adresse, Philippe?
Oui, c'est bon, je coupe le son. Ça va, c'est ici,
Bon,
c'est bon. Ici. C'est bon.
Parfait.
C'est beau?
OK. Oui, c'est bon, on peut commencer, je pense.
Take a last sip of my coffee, and then we can start. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, perhaps even good night, wherever you are on the globe. Welcome to our first ever hybrid council meeting. And what does that mean? Hybrid. Hybrid means that we are here together in Madrid with a lot of folks, and majority of them were or are members or observers of the Strategic Planning Committee. And this is the only meeting we have face-to-face here in Madrid. Unfortunately, Amsterdam wasn't the place to be for all of us together, but okay, this is a situation. At least we had some fun over the last couple of days. My name is Jan Kaars. I'm the president of the IAA for 2021, nearly past president, and I welcome you to this meeting. Next slide, please. Besides, it's by the way, if I welcome you, it's on behalf of the officers. So my fellow officers are our immediate past president Tonya Manning from the USA, our president-elect, the incoming president for next year, Roseanne Harris from South Africa, and also I welcome you on behalf of our always happy and smiling executive director, Mathieu Langelier from Canada. And by the way, at this table we just noticed that half of the audience is French speaking. So I already got the suggestion to do the whole meeting in French. I really tried last couple of days, but in the end it didn't turn out, and otherwise it will take too long for the whole meeting. So I suggest to move on in English. Next slide, please. For this meeting, simply because of the fact it's mainly virtual, we are not going to do a roll call of participants. Please make sure that you modified your Zoom name where you mention your country and your first name. So at least at the moment it is necessary for us that to mention a certain name, we know who you are. And only one delegate per FMA and section is allowed as a council participant. And all participants will be automatically muted. And so also, just a moment, video and screen sharing features have been disabled except for the officers and the presenters today. And if you would like to make a contribution, use the raise hand feature. And once you've been recognized by me, you will be unmuted. But please take into account, we certainly look after the time, so contributions will be limited to 3 minutes and not more than that. Next slide, please. And because of the fact that it's mainly virtual, like last couple of council meetings, we do not allow amendments of motions. Sorry for that. And with every motion we have, I will ask for a mover and a seconder. And if you are willing to do so, then please utilize the raise hand feature. And the raise hand feature you will find somewhere at the bottom of your screen. You will find the reactions, and and under the reactions button, you will find that raise hand feature. Also, if you would like to make a comment, or you have a question or whatever, you can use that one. And at the moment I will recognize you, then you will be unmuted. For every motion, there will be a poll, and the maximum time to fill in your vote will be 1 minute. And if it's if we already noticed that that 1 minute is that within that 1 minute we have enough votes, then certainly we'll shorten that. And what I will ask for every motion is simply I will ask whether you will approve it, and if you approve it, please use the yes button. And if it is not really observable that we have a large support for a motion, then I will ask also for the ones who will be voting no or abstain. And for abstain, we don't have a button in the Zoom meeting. Still, after 2 years, we still don't have that one. So therefore, it is if you want to abstain for a vote, then use the slow down icon. At least we understand then you abstain for that motion. Next slide, please. If you have any questions or whatever beside the raise hand feature, you can always use the chat feature as well. Certainly, I'm personally not be able to look after all the elements, but with the support we have with our executive director, our communication director, Christian, certainly we will be able to handle all those inputs. For any observers and other representatives, they will be able to see this whole meeting live by our IAA YouTube channel. And the recording of this meeting will be available afterwards. Yeah, the format itself, which we've used already for a couple of times over the last 2 years, it is, of course, not perfect, but at least it gives us the opportunity to get to an appropriate level of interaction between all participants. So that is the way we think it's most appropriate. So next slide, please. In total, we have 179 votes, but in this meeting, we have 153 votes available, meaning that the present council delegates, they represent 137 votes. We have 1 proxy from Spain. That is interesting, while we are here in Madrid, but they trust us, that's for sure. And we have received 9 ballots, so representing 13 votes. So next slide, please. Before we continue with the rest of the agenda, sadly, since our last meeting, we have lost 4 IAA volunteers, namely David Congram from Canada, Jim Milholland from the USA, Mahit Hara Davangere from India, and Wim Els from South Africa. So I ask you for a couple of seconds of silence. Thank you. On the agenda, we have the statutory committee reports, and we have a business agenda. And the agenda, as we normally do, need to be improved. By the way, it's not possible to change it, but still, we need your approval for that. And please note that the agenda you got earlier, that there's one change in the order of the topics, and that is the fact that the report of the membership committee will be presented after item 5. And the motion where we need your approval for is that the council approve the agenda as presented. So do we have a mover? Do we have a seconder? Anyone? Yeah? Are there any comments or questions? No. Then do you approve this motion? Yep. Okay, thank you very much. So the agenda has been approved. Next slide, please. Then we go to the council minutes. So the minutes of the last council meeting. So the motion is that the minutes of the council meeting held on May 13, 2021 be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? And do we have a seconder? Yes, great. Any comments or questions? Wait, we don't see anything. Then the question is, do you approve the minutes of this meeting? I mean the meeting May 13, 2021. So at least a couple of people have found the go slower button. So the minutes have been approved. Thank you very much. Next slide, please. Also for information, for your information, in between the two council meetings, we also had 2 electronic ballots. And these were in relation to the recommendation of the membership committee to admit the Ecuadorian Actuarial Association as a full member. And please be aware, we pay more attention to that one later on. There will be a short video. And the other one had to do with the recommendation of the executive committee that the council approved the revised following section rules. And that these were from the sections AFIR, the ERM, Austin, the health, and the life and pension and benefit section. So this is only for your information that you already approved a couple of things in the meantime. Next slide, please. So now we come up to the report of the membership committee, and Mike McDougall is in front of me, sitting in front of me. So Mike, it's all up to you to share your experience and to give us the report of what has happened over the last period.
Thanks, Jan, and thank you for adjusting the agenda to fit us in earlier to accommodate my travel plans. And just start with the membership, just briefly touch on 4 aspects to look at the associate members, particularly those who joined before 2014 when the rules were changed, have an audit process happening to see that the associates are still serving the interests of the profession where they work. We'll talk briefly to that just now. The second item's already been covered with the admission of Ecuador, not as a new member, but as a promoted to a full member from an associate member. Just give a brief summary on the number of members with an actuarial credential, and also talk briefly about the confirmation forms, which we know is a fairly regular feature here, but is an important part of our functions as a professional body association. So we move on to the next one, the associate member audits, and the reason to is really to make sure that the organizations are meeting some minimum standards and ensuring that they are serving the interests of the profession in their jurisdictions. To just confirm minimum levels of governance and accountability to their members, confirm the organizations are serving the profession, and just to have this rolling over a period for as long as it might be needed. If we move on from that, we've spoken about Ecuador, and the reason on the audit really coming to a head now is that found that one of the associate members had not been fulfilling this function, and if anything was working against the interests of the profession in their jurisdiction, and that it was people couldn't be joining it or working with the association there, that there's a lot of work happening with our advice and assistance committee there to try and help the profession there. The organization was largely unresponsive to the process, and through process found that they had effectively no membership events, no annual general meetings or any other form of governance for a while, that the chairman just happened to be in place there, not quite sure how it happened, in various processes. So through an audit process that was run, let's say, with the advice and assistance committee, as well as the executive committee being involved through this process, the membership committee has looked at the exclusion of Bangladesh as a member from the end of this year, and to allow the profession to restart and to grow, hopefully through a new association there into the new year. We move on from there just to look at our members with actuarial credential, and let's all know that 3 years ago when we did the fee review, the definitions were changed to ensure consistency across all the associations in terms of the levying of annual dues to the IAA. And just a summary as to where we stand at the end of 2020, there were 73 full-member associations, and they're now 74, with Ecuador having been admitted with their 11 members with actuarial credential. We've seen over the year the organic growth in the organization was at very pedestrian 0.2%, with just a net increase of 208 members from the end of 2020 to what we're looking at this stage, with rapid growth in some organizations, but others have lost members over this period, but a fairly stable position as far as the membership is concerned, and we'll continue to track this on an ongoing basis. And just finally to the confirmation forms, which is a key sort of governance requirement for the IIA on an annual basis, which will be going out very shortly for 2021 confirmation forms, and we expect those in by the end of March of the following year. Just a record of the membership numbers and the details of the president and other officers of the association. And just the key for full members, there are standards that we need to meet with regard to our codes of conduct, our disciplinary processes, whether we're setting standards and our processes for setting standards, our education syllabus and the requirements for admission as members with the actuarial credential, and what's the activity we've had in the disciplinary process over the previous year. So nothing that is particularly onerous that needs to be there. Should any of these documents have been changed, we'll be asking to review the documents to ensure that they continue to meet the IIA standards on which our members are admitted to the IIA. And this year there are no additional requirements from other structures as far as the confirmation forms are concerned. So a fairly quick 15-minute to maybe half an hour process to complete the form for any association. But even at that level, so that we are disappointed at the overall levels of completion of the documents, where we're seeing that even though 2020 has been a better year than the previous years, maybe when we were all locked up or working from home, there's nothing else to do, or whatever the case might have been, but with less than 80% of full members and around 60% of associate members having completed it, it is a disappointing turn. And it's the professional side of our obligation for the IIA is important as the financial one, in terms of being a member in good standing of the IIA. So I really encourage you to get these completed, to have your associations complete these by the end of the first quarter, so we can continue as a sound body in the IIA. So unless there are any questions, I'll hand back to Jan to manage questions if there are questions, or back to.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. So are there any questions or are there any comments to the report? Gabor.
Yes, thank you, Jan. I have a question about.
By the way, Gabor, you look beautiful with your.
Thank you very much. Well, we're waiting for Santa Claus very anxiously.
Yeah.
So my question is, whose decision is it if the membership status just is terminated for an association? It's unclear to me. Is it the membership committee that decides on that, or what's the governance around it? I know it's not a frequent event that there is a proposal to or an event when an association status just ceases to exist and it's terminated. But just for I mean, normal or conventional wisdom may say that if the decision to admit a member is of the council, that perhaps the termination could be from council. I'm not sure if there is a existing governance around that. I know that in the interregulation, there's a possibility of a temporary dispensation from compliance for full or associate members, but it's unclear to me whether or not the membership committee decides on such issue, or another entity, or council. Thank you.
The membership committee is a recommendation, and my understanding it was an executive committee decision.
Yes, that's correct. So the ultimate decision has been made by EC. Any other questions or comments? No. Then let's move on to the video of our new FMA, the Ecuadorian Actuarial Association, and the president of that association, Rodrigo Ibarra, will tell us more. And some patience for technology. And in the meantime, perhaps if you are surprised that we are sitting together so closely, yeah, we are here in a bubble, which means that every day at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, we get tested. And we are not allowed to sit together if one of us will be tested positively. And so far, it's going good. It's going well. So this is, I've already told you, this is a kind of experimental hybrid meeting. And so this is the measure we've taken to make it happen. So at least it looks going well.
So the video is not working. You can make it public after
Yes.
the event. We'll share the video from the video.
Yeah, the video.
Okay. Or perhaps even later in the program.
Yeah, but it's like during the break.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. It was working earlier because we tested it.
Hopefully the other videos will work. But
Yes.
next slide, please. And the next slide is about celebration of actuarial anniversaries. Yeah, there it is. So we have 3 actuarial associations who celebrate the 25th year and of their existence. And there's the first one is the Croatian one. At the moment I saw this logo, I had something like, okay, which one is it? But it was said to me that this is Croatia, and we have the Actuarial Society of Ghana also celebrating the 25th years of existence, and the Lithuania Actuarial Society. And our Austrian colleagues already exist for 50 years. And the winner for today is our Israeli organization. So thank you very much and congratulations. Next slide, please. And now we get to the real part of the agenda, the statutory committee reports. Next slide, please. The EC has made a lot of decisions regarding appointments for committees, especially the committees of the assure function, education, professionalism, membership, etc. So, but it's wonderful the EC makes those decisions, but we still need to have your approval for that. So therefore, the motion is that the Council ratifies the appointments and reappointments approved by the Executive Committee as indicated in the deployment charts which you've got. So do we have a mover for this motion? Yes, Ralph is there. Do we have a seconder? Yes, we have. Any?
Juan Carlos, just name it, please, so people understand. So, seconder Ralph, mover Ralph, seconder Juan Carlos.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any comments or are there any questions regarding these appointments and reappointments? No. Then the question is, are you in favor? The ones who are in favor, please indicate. Now, we already have the majority, and we only need to have a simple majority. So this motion has been approved, even with 100%. So thank you very much. Oh no, in the end, there was a last one. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, now we're going to talk about what we have done over the last period, and not only as of the last council meeting, but it's also part of the whole year 2021. So, and we split it up in our three strategic objectives: impact, assure, and advance. So we start with the impact function. And as you know, the impact function has a lot to do with our contacts to supranationals. And one of our major supranationals we have contact with, not only contact with, we are really partner of, is the IAIS. And over the last period, we have had regular meetings with their staff, including a visit to the Basel office, and that was done by our executive director. And further, a lot of high-level talks are planned already for December. We also participated in the IAIS annual conference. We submitted several responses to IAIS public consultations. If you talk about the climate, our climate risk task force, they were very often in contact also with the IAIS. We submitted several papers, and they really appreciated the fact that we done so. So it looks like that we are really on a good track if you related to that. And also we responded to their own task force on climate-related financial disclosures. So if you talk about that climate risk initiative we've taken a couple of years ago, that certainly makes sense. So next slide, please. By the way, before we go into the A2II, I need to say that regarding IAIS, Stuart Wason has played a very important role in the last, now not only a couple of years, but perhaps it's even a century or whatever. I wasn't there at the start, but he really played an enormous role in creating that good relationship. And unfortunately, he's going to retire from that role in this year, but we found a very good successor for him in the person of Nick Dexter. So that is something I would like to mention here as well. Next slide, please. Now we move on to the A2II. So that is another success story we already shared with you, but we certainly need to emphasize these are important actions of our organization. So we had already last time we mentioned about our joint project together with the A2II to provide actuarial capacity building for supervisors and the staff of supervisors. And last half a year, we participated in phase 2 of that joint project. And we delivered over 4 weeks, also pre-recorded videos, online webinars, breakout sessions. And this time it was focused on the English-speaking part of Africa, with an attendance from 40 supervisors and the staff of supervisors in 21 countries. So, I had the privilege also to interview Fred Rawley, who led this initiative, and it's all now you can show it. It's all on YouTube if you want to see it. What the interview held, and simply listen to Fred, how enthusiastic he was to be able to lead this project and to contribute. So, and there will be a next phase. And next phase will be focusing on Latin and South America, and that will be done in Spanish. And there will be also one on the French-speaking part of Africa. So, next slide, please. Regarding IASB and Ifrs, we renewed the mutual recognition. The mutual memorandum of understanding. Thank you very much, Mathieu. We issued the IAN 100. And so that is all about education and how to use all the material and the rules, etc., etc. It took more than 3 years of work to get there. And if you think that is due to the fact that we were slow, no, sorry, that was not the fact. It had all to do with the organization itself as well. So, but we've done what we could do, and it was really the paper itself of the IAN 100 itself wonderful that we produced it, but it's more important whether it will be used. And we have a success story because our Canadian association shared what they've done with it, and they used it for educational material. And if you want to see, so during the Madrid town hall meeting 2 days ago, Jacques Tremblay already shared their experience from the Canadian offices, and certainly it will be somewhere available on YouTube to see what the success held. We also prepared a response, or we are in the midst of preparing a response to proposed amendments to Ifrs 13 and IAS 19. And yeah, that's it on ASB and Ifrs. So now we move on to the COP26 IPC and the SIF. So this has all to do with climate risk. And now, as I've told you, our climate risk task force has been very busy over the last 2 years. And in the last period, they issued a third paper in September, and that was all about the scenarios applied to insurers and other financial institutions. The fourth, so if you, we really encourage you to share this and also the earlier papers with your members. And what we've already noticed that some of our members use these kind of papers already in their educational programs. And simply, if you look at the future of our profession and the future actuaries, this is a topic where we can play an enormous role. And therefore, it's really worthwhile to make use of the material we provide. So again, we encourage you to look at those papers and to think of whether you can use it for your own education programs. We are busy with the fourth paper, and that is on risk scenarios to asset portfolio released for consultation. And consultation means consultation from you. So work has started on the fifth paper, and so we really appreciate if you could give us your feedback on the fourth paper. You can do that before tomorrow. So there's still 1 day left to do so. We signed a Memorandum of Understanding with the Sustainable Insurance Forum. And we also participated in a joint webinar with the Society of Actuaries in Ireland. And also last couple of months, we issued a statement related to the COP 26. So that is that conference, the UN Climate Change Conference of Parties, that is the full name. And perhaps you think that our statement was a bit too late. At least we got several reactions from individual actuaries. But now perhaps we could have done that better. On the other hand, we were the only actuarial association releasing a statement of support in this respect. And after the moment we released it, we noticed that several FMAs really showed their appreciation that we've done so. But certainly we can do better in the future. We are learning day by day. And that is also the reason that we joined as an observer association to the IPCC, and that we are also in contact to the SIF, simply to get better in this environment and to understand where the needs are, etc. So this is a very good development, which we would like to share with you. Next slide, please. On OECD and IOPS, we renewed the Memorandum of Understanding with the OECD. It was quite nice that we had a joint section colloquium with so our colloquium. So the joint section means that our sections together held a colloquium, and we asked Pablo Antolin from the OECD to participate in that and to make a presentation. And he participated and he made that presentation. So this is a kind of partnership we are really looking for. That it's simply a kind of proof that those partnerships really work. So we are very pleased with that. And we submitted several responses to the OECD consultation on the roadmap for good design of defined contribution, retirement, saving plans. Jesus. But you know what it means. It has all to do with DC. And the IOPS consultation on the proposals of good practices of pension practices. Next slide, please. On the assure function, yeah, we've been quite busy with the assure function, and it started this year within the group of officers we spoke about, and within the EC, what are we going to do on diversity and inclusion. And my fellow officers, and you can understand because we have a female-dominated group of officers, they were very enthusiastic to take this on. And later on, you will hear more. Later on in this presentation, you will hear more about our initiative on diversity and inclusion. And we've made quite some progress because we started from scratch. That's something you need to take into account. And you will hear more, as I mentioned. Some specimen actuarial standards, that's something we also had some activities on. And for some of our smaller associations, it's pretty important that they have standards as well. So we are busy with that. We issued a survey and we reported back. And this is still something which we are busy with. So it's ongoing work. As we want our profession to grow and further development, of course we assist let's say new organizations. So new associations in Angola, Malawi, and Nepal, we assisted them in the development, in their own development. We held an Asia webinar. The Asia Task Force organized that. That was all around the professional actuaries in times of uncertainty. Ecuador, we just mentioned, so they became a full member association. We reviewed the associate member category, and so we thought about the compliance with membership requirements. You already got a report from the membership committee, but still it is something where we continuously have a look at, because professionalism and our quality is really an important element of the things we are doing. And we are still busy with the IAA syllabus compliance, and that is something where not only the EC is busy with, but also within the SPC, we have had many discussions about how we are going to organize that. And it will continue in the next year, but certainly our goal is to solve this. And so that's all about Assure. Let's move on to Advance. We published a paper on mortality by cause of death, and we also held a webinar around this in July. So that is also what I understand, quite a number of people participated in that webinar. So it's and especially during times of pandemics, there's quite some interest in death suddenly. Wow. So it looks like that we are able to add any value on this topic. We also issued a paper on opportunities for applying actuarial techniques in banking. So also released in July with a webinar held in November. And if we speak to our colleagues in South Africa, they say this is not a wider field anymore. This is already somewhere something where our profession is in the midst of, but that certainly does not apply to every part in the country. So therefore, it's great that we simply can share what has been done in Africa, and I guess the UK was also involved in this webinar. So in some parts of the globe that we all learn from this. Plenty of education events has been organized. So section webinars, a joint health conference between the health section and the Singapore Actuarial Society. As I mentioned before, we had that section colloquium where all sections were involved. That was in October. And we are planning to have events together with Hong Kong and one in Orlando, where you will hear more later on today. And the last one in this respect is the release of the podcast series from the health section on international healthcare funding. And we have a second slide on advance. Internally, because a lot of activities, what I shared so far, a lot of activities were externally, but really to organize ourselves, we need to do something internally as well. And so last couple of years, we have been busy with the renewal of our organization, and part of that was the creation of new forums and virtual forums. And it took a while, but in the end, we succeeded. So we have good representation across member associations, and the fact that we are working virtually also opens the possibility for smaller FMAs, smaller associations to participate as well. Because in the past, not always they were possible to attend those meetings face to face simply because of the cost. And now virtual meetings certainly have disadvantage, but also have advantages. But still, with every change in an organization, we have challenges as well. So some FMAs are more engaged than others, and some forums are working, are better aligned and prepared for the future than others. So this is, yeah, we are in the midst of a change program. It's not that after the decision to make a change that everything works immediately perfectly. So this is something where we still need to work on. And also, if you look at the individual volunteers, we still need to work on the motivation and their commitment. So that is certainly something we are busy with. And lastly, one part of the whole renewal process, and also to become more efficient, that we try to lower the pressure on secretariat and really to communicate with each other, not through email anymore on these kind of topics, but really to come up with community tools, more modern style of communicating among us. But we've noticed that in practice, not always it is easy for everyone to use those tools. So this is certainly something where we are aware of, and we we will try to improve that early 2022. Next slide, please. Yeah, the engagement with our FMAs. So we simply live with we exist with the support of our FMAs, and we also need to look to the future, and we need to stay in contact and get in contact with also the new generation, the future actuary, and especially in an environment where you only had virtual contact. We had last year the challenge, how to keep everyone engaged and how to get in contact with everyone. So what we've done, and by the way, we've done that earlier on with all kind of meetings, but now it was more in all cases it was virtual. So we had regular bilateral meetings with FMAs. So that is a constant attempt of us to keep in contact with the members and to understand what is going on, where are frustrations, where's the passion, what can we do collectively better, etc. So that is something where we constantly try to keep our eyes and ears open, and please tell us if you think that there's a need for contact, because we are open for that, and we are not only open, we really encourage you to do so, because it's so important that we understand what is going on in the field. Something new in what we've done in our organization, and that was due to the fact that it was all virtual, is that in the past, when we had those wonderful face-to-face meetings, and now the last couple of days we experienced again how wonderful it is having those face-to-face meetings now with the SPC, not within the SPC itself. We had a lot of discussions and debates and communication, but mostly also outside those meetings, in the hallway, during dinners or whatever. So we experience how valuable that is within the SPC. But that applies to all different meetings we have within our association. So and we've noticed, we are not able to do that with all meetings, at least not so far, and that's the reason we introduced a new initiative, and we called it the Espresso Yourself sessions. Meaning during the coffee breaks, you needed to get your own coffee. We had great discussions, but also simply sharing ideas about several topics. So the topics were, for instance, on how to engage millennials to our organization, but also the future of the actuary. We talked about diversity and inclusion, because certainly it is interesting to define yourself what is important, but at the same moment you need to understand what is going on in the different associations themselves, because we can come up with an initiative, but we totally rely, of course, on our members. It's not something we do alone, we do this together. And the latest one was about the engagement of volunteers. That is also something where, we from time to time we struggle with that as IAA, but our individual associations struggle with that as well. And it's interesting to share ideas. And so with this Espresso Yourself initiative, we are able to hear what happens at other places. We held 2 talk shows on Facebook Live, and the latest one was hosted by Lisa White, and that was about the shaping of future actuaries to shape the world. Unfortunately, it is not available yet on YouTube, but hopefully it will be soon. And it is you already see the persons who were involved in that talk show, and it's great. It was only in the middle of the night, so I was not able to, at least in my time, I was not able. I could have been able to to watch and listen it, but I hope the recording will be available soon. Next slide, please. What we've also have done, and that was quite a surprise that it was so successful, is that we recorded 45 interviews with actuaries from across the world. And that was because we wanted to have something for the International Actuaries Day celebration. So we had that live event in September 2nd, and as a contribution to that, we held those interviews. And Mathieu and I and our officers, the four of us, held those interviews, and we got in contact with people who we have never seen before. So this is really something where we think this is nice, because we need to keep in contact with the profession, and this is a new way. It is a kind of experiment as well, how to get in contact with the profession, because please be aware, the volunteers we normally see at those meetings are not always a complete representation of the whole profession. So with these new measures, we are able at least to hear and feel more what is going on. And all those videos are available on YouTube. And another initiative, we at the end of the year, we would like to celebrate this year. And we have a festivity on December 15th, and registration is still open. All those initiatives caused also that our LinkedIn followers increased by 1,200 in 6 months. So, and we have 300 plus new YouTube subscribers. So probably people who never had contact to YouTube before, or I don't know, but at least a large increase. So our social media certainly works. Next slide, please. Now, it's great that we have done so many things. And if you think that it's mainly due to a few people at officers level or secretariat, certainly not. So we really need to thank all of our volunteers in the organization. And one group is the executive committee. You see here the faces of the executive committee. So we meet every month, and we discuss all kind of operational topics, like the Bangladesh one, for instance, Gabor. That is a topic which we discuss. So we do this together, and we are very grateful that we have a lot of very motivated people. Next slide, please. And also within the committees, a lot of work has been done so far. So we really would like to thank the committee chairpersons, which you see here in this, on the screen, but also all the members in those committees. Next slide, please. And not to forget, so in the past, these were, we would be speaking about the chairpersons of committees, and now we have forums. So therefore, a separate slide where we have the forum chairpersons and the virtual forum chairpersons. At the moment, I see this on the screen. I have something like, why did we make that split? Because both are forums. It's not that a virtual forum is less than a forum. So both are forums. So if probably Roseanne will change that next year and only talk about forums. It's only that certain forums, there's probably a larger need from time to time to come together and have face-to-face meetings. So thanks also to those chairpersons and all the members of those forums for the large progress we've made last year. Next slide, please. And as Abe always encourages us, please don't forget the sections, because the sections are part of our organization. And of course, our organization is an association of associations, but we also have sections. And within those sections, thousands of individual actuaries are busy with all kind of innovation and share their experience, and what they produce, and now we've already seen it, of course, is all those webinars and colloquia and congresses, think of the ICAs, etc. So we need to be very grateful for all the material they provide and all the contributions, etc. So thank you to section chairs and the board members and all those individual actuaries involved over here. Next slide, please. And before we forget it, we have our secretariat as well. So you see 10 people over here which have been who have been very busy in supporting us and taking the initiative. Because if you think that it has all been done by volunteers, certainly volunteers have played an enormous role, but without the support of the secretariat, we have been nowhere. And I see we even have a vacancy, and that what we try to do as an organization is really to become a global organization. So we are looking for a senior IT manager, but it doesn't have to be a Canadian one. That's what I understood. So the future composition of secretariat could be whatever it develops to a real global organization supporting a global organization as we are as IAA. Thank you very much. I would like to ask for an applause for the secretary. Next slide, please. Diversity and inclusion. I've already told you it's the first time this year we touched on this topic, and it's quite important. And Lisa Waite and El Beer are part of the task force working on this. And I guess Lisa will give this presentation, and perhaps Elle will interfere as well. I'm not sure, but the word is up to both of you.
Thanks very much, Jan. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. As Jan would have indicated, this report was prepared by myself and Al on behalf of the Executive Committee's Diversity and Inclusion Task Force. Next slide.
Sorry, Lisa.
Yes.
Just for our information, what time is it at your place?
It is 4 a.m. and this is actually the earliest I've ever gotten up to give a presentation, so bear with me.
Yeah, please be aware of the time. When we talk about passion for a topic, this is the proof. So please continue, Lisa.
Yes, thank you very much. Diversity means different things to all of us. Our understanding of diversity is very much shaped by our life experiences. Discussing diversity and inclusion requires an acknowledgement and tolerance of our differences and an understanding and appreciation of our interdependence and interconnectedness. Next slide, please. The actuarial profession is very much a global one. Many of the issues that we are facing today, such as climate change, are global in scope and nature and thus require a global response. It is very important for an umbrella organization such as ours to provide an environment which fosters collaboration by all of its member associations and volunteers. Next slide, please. Next slide. Diversity is part of a journey. The journey must start with an understanding of where we are now, as well as devising strategies to work towards providing a profession that is more representative of all of us. Next slide. Next slide.
I think it's just
Next slide.
We can already see the next slide.
Oh, I can't. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thanks. A strategy of diversity and inclusion is important if the IAA is to achieve its mission and strategic objectives. The global reach of the IAA requires us to work across borders and have a better understanding of our diverse cultures. For the profession to remain at the forefront of global thinking on issues that are critical to the financial services industry and wider fields, it is important that we learn from our colleagues who work in more and less developed markets so that we as a profession can contribute impactfully on emerging issues and areas of practice, as well as to continue to innovate on more established ones. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide.
Probably there's a delay.
Yeah, there's a sorry, my apologies, there's a delay.
We can already see the next one.
Okay, thanks. The Executive Council decided to focus on the issue of diversity and inclusion and has formed a task force to do this. One of the first recommendations of the task force was a change in the IAA value statement. This was agreed to the Council earlier this year. The change in the value statement signaled the IAA's intention to promote a global profession which is diverse and inclusive in its nature. Next slide. In August, the task force conducted a survey to assist it in understanding the work that is currently being carried out by member associations, as well as the areas that member associations believe that the IAA can provide a meaningful contribution towards a dialogue on diversity and inclusion. There were 27 respondents to the survey, which had 2 sections. Section 1 asked about diversity and inclusion topics to learn about the aspects of relevance for member associations, the D&I aspects of their associations that they would recommend that the IAA work with them on, as well as their interest with sharing any information that they may have on the topics. Next slide. It was noted by respondents that the IAA, through its global reach, is already a very diverse association. Many respondents also indicated that as member associations have different needs and priorities with respect to D&I, that the work that the IAA should carry out should enable them to have the freedom to determine which aspects they care to collaborate with the IAA. Next slide. Section 2 of the survey focused on the work that member associations are undertaking to engage with young in-career actuaries. All of the associations indicated that it is important for them to engage with this demographic. The vast majority of respondents indicated that they are willing to share and engage on this issue, which is a crucial one for the profession. An actuarial pipeline, which is diverse and inclusive, is important if the profession of tomorrow is to be more diverse and inclusive than that of today. Such a pipeline can only occur through the engagement of young and career actuaries, as well as students at the high school and university level who have an aptitude for STEM subjects. Following the survey, the task force decided to initially focus on the areas of gender and generational diversity. These are areas which are currently the focus of member associations at this time. Next slide. My final slide shows the IAA's Executive Committee's Task Force's current action plan with respect to D&I. It's recognized that the member associations are carrying out a myriad of activities with respect to D&I. The IAA, through this program of activities, seeks to support these initiatives by providing forums for member associations to share ideas, best practices, and experiences with respect to initiatives on diversity and inclusion. The task force welcomes any feedback and input on the actions proposed and encourages member associations and volunteers to participate in the information sharing and events. Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa. So I guess the floor is now up to us, whether we have any comments or any questions towards this initiative. So are there any questions or comments, or perhaps even from my fellow officers, Tonya or Roseanne, anything to add what Lisa just described? But first, I see Gabor's hand. So, of course, Gabor, our great contributor. So,
thank you. Just a question. Can we ask questions or comments on your report, the president and the EC, or just you would focus on Lisa's report at this time?
Good point. I simply forgot to open the floor to that. But first, I would like to give some attention to Lisa's presentation.
Okay, then I will come later on because I will have a question to the President and EC report. Thank you.
Yeah. So, but first, a question and comment regarding the diversity and inclusion. And I see Hartwig Sorger from Austria.
Yes. Hello, everybody from Austria. So you ask for questions, and for me personally, it would be extremely helpful if in the future you could include the presentations in the agenda or in the documents for the meeting or the reports to the council, so that we could prepare questions and think about it in advance. So at the moment we just hear it and ask for questions, and this is quite challenging for me. So if we in future could have the presentations in advance, I think there can also be more questions and more open discussion following.
I understand what you just mentioned. It won't be possible to have a perfect situation because a lot of changes in the presentation simply take place even this morning or yesterday evening. But we need to have a further look at it. So I understand it that you, as a council representative, you need the council delegate, you need to be able to raise the appropriate questions and to prepare for that. So we will have another thought how to organize it.
Thank you.
I see Jill hands, and probably that has something to do with diversity and inclusion. Jill.
Yes, it does. Thank you, Jan, and thank you, Lisa, and for this great work. A specific question. With respect to the plans for 2022-23, identify ICA elements of interest to younger actuaries and create a program addressed to them. Could you provide a bit more details about what that would look like? Thank you.
Lisa.
I don't think we've actually fully fleshed this out. I do believe that we have had, and I speak subject to correction if Tanya and Roseanne could let me know, express some initial word or signaled an interest to the ICA committee of perhaps identifying which items on their current program would be of interest to younger in career actuaries, and try to find a way to promote ICA as well as those particular tracks or discussions or presentations that we think would be of interest to younger actuaries, and try to market those as a specific thing within the wider context of the ICA conference.
Okay, thank you.
I saw Maria from Slovakia. Again, good morning, Maria.
Yes, hello everybody. So from Slovakia, I am here as a chairperson from our Slovak Association, and I very much appreciate this initiative. I think that's something what we should do. I really like it, and especially I would like to say more about this unconscious biasness. I think that's something what is very important because there are several levels. And a lot of these unconscious biases are well documented by psychologists. So I would really like to hear more how we see it as actuaries in our day-to-day life, and how it can influence the perception also of us as actuaries, because I believe we are also a part of that bias, maybe by our stakeholders. So I just applaud to this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. And by the way, yesterday we spoke to Maria as well, but then in another role, because she's chairperson of the Actuarial Association of Europe. So a very important person in our profession. So and therefore, yesterday, just for your information, we simply, as two organizations, the global organization and the European Association, quite frequently, we have our communication together simply to update each other about the different initiatives we take, because together we try to achieve, we have the same goal, and we try to achieve it sometimes alone and sometimes simply by informing us. We will be able to achieve even more and simply not always bundling our forces, but at least make sure that we don't waste too much time, because it's too fragmented then. So as an introduction of Maria in this meeting. Any other comments or reactions to the D&I initiative? No. Then let's go back. Sorry, Tonya, you have to wait a moment because Gabor wants to ask or to raise a question regarding the reports of the executive committee and the officers. Gabor, go ahead. And sorry for the fact that I haven't asked.
No problem.
Before.
No problem, Jan. Thank you for the floor. So my question is, have the officers or president and the executive committee made a kind of an assessment whether or not it is the benefit for the IAA and the professional global good if the IAA is a partner to a new organization which is called International Sustainability Standards Board. This new organization has been established by the Ifrs Foundation. It's a sister organization to the IASB, the International Accounting Standards Board. And the IA has participated in the discussion, or the preliminary discussion, and was positive, as far as I recall, of the foundation of this new entity or new organization. And so I would be really interested what we are doing in this respect. And this is emphasized by the fact that through my employer, I understand that this new entity will be very active, and even within 1 year, they plan to issue 2 exposure drafts on sustainability reporting. So the question is, what is the IA doing in respect of being a partner of the ISSB, so International Sustainability Standard Board? Thank you, Jan.
Thank you, Gabor. I would like to, I've already seen that Elf raised his hand, and probably he is the best person to reflect on this, because he coordinates all our contacts with supranationals and coordinates the different relationship managers. So Elf, please, what is the answer to that?
Hi, Gabor. Spot on. Correct. That is an entity where we have identified a need to get close to. As you know, Andrew is our connection to the IASB, and is a member of the I think it's called the advisory committee or some advisory body there. And we obviously want to get a foothold into the ISSB, and we have discussed that in the supranational roundtable. It was just 2 days ago. We had mentioned that that we want to do that. Obviously, they are not waiting for us to rush in there. They will be, obviously, as they have been to date, somewhat reserved, but we have done such a lot of good work and have such good connections, established connections with climate-related bodies at the IAIS and the IPCC, etc., etc. And through the papers that we have prepared, or that the climate-related task force has prepared in the last 2 years, we have upped our image. So I think we are in a good position to do that. Yes, we want to do that. We are not there yet. There is still some work to do, but we have identified that, and we are sitting on a good I would say, pile of work that we have done that we can prove to the ISSB that we have something to contribute. That's it.
Thank you, Alf. Is that enough of an answer for you, Gabor?
Thank you, Alf. Thank you for the answer. I'm good.
Okay. Any other questions in relation to the report of the EC and the officers? I don't see any, so let's continue to the report of the Strategic Planning Committee. So I would like to hand it over to our immediate past president, Madam Tonya Manning.
Thank you so much, John. It is my pleasure to present to Council a report of the activities of the Strategic Planning Committee. I will say that it has been quite an honor to lead this important committee as it continues to settle into how it is going to be best to operate and, more importantly, lead the IAA in a more strategic direction as it looks to find direction from what we call the top down versus the many activities that have driven us in the past. One of my passions, I have to say, in addition to college basketball, which I realize does not translate very well, but also diversity and inclusion regarding, particularly regarding gender, but it's always been strategy and trying to figure out how to get an association or a company or any team to think about where they're going and how they're going to really fulfill their mission and vision. And while I am still passionate about that, I have to be honest, there was a little bit of difficulty in trying to fulfill that in this committee this year with our virtual format. We did make progress with our monthly meetings and we've accomplished some important items that we'll discuss today. But I am very thrilled to say we had 2 days of meetings here in Madrid where we probably made more progress than you could combine many of those virtual meetings. It was very refreshing to see the energy, the discussion, collaboration, and progress. And the item that we discussed and focused most on while here in Madrid was our strategic plan, which is the first thing I'd like to present to you. All right, so what we did in our goal here for a strategic plan, if you look at the terms of reference for the Strategic Planning Committee, this is a key accountability that we are to come up with a 5-year plan and to make sure that we are monitoring that and it's being executed. So a strategic plan in our mind was that it would be a map of how to lead the IAA to its desired future state. We were trying to answer the important question, what will we look like in 5 years? What will we be doing differently? How will we look different? How will we be better? How will we advance? So in coming up with the strategic plan, we wanted to make sure that it would be inspirational, but also executable and focused on moving us forward. And to make that happen, we decided to come up with a structure that will be expressed by goals and then supported by activities to achieve those goals. And of course, always framed by who we are as an association. We're global and of course, an association of associations. This is different than what the SBC had observed over the last 2 days, where we had broken it down into 3 stages. But based on our progress, I've modified it to now have 4. But we're trying to march through this in an orderly way. And I've indicated in orange what we have accomplished, and in blue is what is yet to be done under the leadership of Jan as he takes over the Strategic Planning Committee position as chair next year. So what we spent our time on here is stage 1, where we were focused on setting the goals. What is that future state? What are the key items that we want to look at and focus on in the next 5 years from a high level as an association? The next step will be to formalize those goals and make sure that we have the right ones, frame the messaging so that you as our most important stakeholders understand what we're trying to do, and of course, eventually get your approval. We are going to pass that off, SBC, to EC to operationalize this strategic plan. And they will look at activities and how to assess progress on those activities and goals, and set timing and interim goals, and of course confirm that with SBC. EC will also be responsible for oversight. They will develop a communications plan, which we find is just as important to do the right thing as to communicate what you're doing, and to make sure that there's a clear understanding throughout the association about what our goals are and how we're progressing. We also decided that it would be important to have yearly goals, annual goals, so that we know what we're going to have as a work plan, if you will, each year, and to monitor activities. It was also noted that SPC, as well as council, should be provided routine updates, perhaps twice per year, to make sure that we're all on track and understand each other. And of course, the last bullet, adjust as needed. That could be a little, that could be a lot. If we have something like a pandemic again, we'll have to definitely make that reflected in our strategic plan. So again, we were focusing on the goals, and as we laid out what we wanted them to be about, the most important thing is we wanted them to be inspiring. And Jan has talked a lot this morning, so I won't tap him again, but he did a good job of making sure that we all knew that we were to try to do something bigger and bolder than what we could have done in the past, when we were really just collecting activities from our different committees and entities within IAA. What can we do that is inspiring? We also wanted to make sure it was measurable, or as Gabor pointed out, actually has some way of being assessed. So we just really want to make sure that we understand what success looks like in some sort of fashion. And of course, make sure they're realistic and, very much important, reflective of what FMA's value and will support. So the selection of the goals for our strategic plan, they were a set of goals that we originally started out with that were focused on our 3 strategic objectives, but we came up with ones that were also overarching as proposed goals. And that's what the last bullet is to reflect. But the set of goals will focus on at a top level over the next 5 years. I do not have, you could go to the next slide. So I do not have a list of proposed goals because I did not think that was appropriate until SBC was comfortable with what they think we came up with. They've only seen it in a presentation, and I wanted to make sure Jan was comfortable as well as chair. But what I have here in a very busy and quite colorful slide is some of the key thoughts that I tried to capture through our 2 days of discussion and what we want those goals and that future state of the IAE to be about. Of course, most importantly, that we are inspiring, but capturing things like valuing our professionalism, looking at lifelong learning, proactive viewpoints, etc. So more to come on our 5-year strategic plan, but we are making good progress, and you will be hearing about those goals shortly. Shortly in terms of, relative to the IEA. Now, moving on to specific initiatives that we are hoping to get started, we have developed 2 draft statements of intent on the 2 items that council approved to do so. I'm going to pass it over to Roseanne, who is our president-elect for the next few hours or next few days. And she's going to talk about pandemics, and then we'll go to the next one with Joe. So, Roseanne.
Thanks, Tanya, and hello everyone from Madrid. I certainly wish you were all here, but nice to see you all online as well. And thanks Tanya for stressing the fact that this is of course a draft, that the document that you have seen circulated with the agenda is a draft, and the intention here is that as an organization we've identified in the last few days that one of the objectives is for us to be more agile and also more transparent in terms of how we're developing these plans. And so circulating this in its draft format for your inputs and comments is of course part of that. And Christelle is here as well. She led this task force with great passion in terms of putting this SOI together, but unfortunately she's got to leave soon, so that's why I'm going to talk about this. So of course the pandemic, very much not a post-pandemic work, but perhaps current pandemic work, as we have certainly learned to need to be agile in changing our plans over the last week or so. And we have all experienced the global ramifications of this pandemic. And there have been specific areas that have really touched on actuarial work. And so part of this task force developing the SOI's task was to really identify those areas of work which are of specific relevance to the actuarial profession and where we can add value at a global level. So very much looking at those principles of issues of global interest. So we've identified a number of areas where actuaries have been affected relating to the economic consequences, the impact on mortality and morbidity, as well as, of course, impacts on protection and inequalities in access to protection that have been exposed during the pandemic, as well as the need to start considering alternative risk platforms. So Chris, if you can go to the next slide. We've also, as an organization, experienced, of course, a number of immediate requests, and our super partners have already reached out to the IAA to ask for our inputs on certain topics. So the topic of insurability that has arisen during the crisis, as well as how this crisis links to other areas of catastrophe modeling, and of course our climate risk work features there. Also understanding the protection gaps and particularly the mortality table impacts, and in fact that is input that we have already provided in terms of the ongoing work that has been done around the profession. So the purpose of this exercise in terms of putting together the SOI is to really plan what we can contribute as the IAA, and mindful of the fact that our core purpose is around facilitating the sharing of information. What we're wanting to do is really coordinate and collaborate with the FMAs in terms of that excellent work and raise it to the level of the supers and the kind of questions that they are asking, as well as improving our own understanding as a profession of the work that has been done and how this impacts on financial risk management around the world and risk management in general. And of course, that features or fits in with promoting the application of the actuarial skill set in this important area. Next slide. So the work that has been identified, and this is really where we would appreciate your comments and inputs in terms of the kind of activities under our strategic objectives of impact, advance, and assure that the task force working on the SOI have identified. So just to be clear that the task force I'm referring to is a task force of the SPC that has been working on developing the plan. But of course, part of the proposal here is establishing a task force, which of course would have much broader opportunity for participation to actually carry out this work. So at the moment, we're looking for your support for the kind of work that is being considered under this, of course, critical theme globally. So you can see that under impact, the kind of activities are around our partnerships with the supers. Under advance, it's around sharing information. And that includes, of course, sharing information through various webinars and events, including the ICA, as well as developing a limited number of papers with particularly our super audience in mind. And then, of course, supporting from an assure point of view, the sharing of this information for developing the profession globally. So maybe we go to the last slide, which is just the guiding principles here. As I mentioned, is of course making sure that we're addressing topics or doing work that is in the public interest and that is adding value in terms of a global level of input and building on and harnessing the work that has been done by the FMAs around the world. So the proposal is to establish this limited period task force that would be working under the EC in a similar way to the CRTF has been working to coordinate this work. So largely this task force would play a coordinating role, and they would have a very important partnership, I think, with the Advanced Committee in terms of that sort of pooling and sharing of information that is done by the Advanced Committee. So Tony, back to you. I'm not sure if you're going to take discussion at this point or perhaps at the end.
up to the chair.
For me, it's wonderful if we already can have some questions on this part.
Correct.
So any questions, comments?
Maybe Christelle will want
Christelle,
to add a few notes.
No, Rosanna has been perfect, so.
Lovely.
So questions on this one?
Yeah. So already see a couple of hands. So we just had two presentations, more in general the 5-year strategic plan, and now the element of the pandemics. So for both, you can raise your questions or whatever, give any comments. I see Ralph first.
Thank you. I assume people can hear me now?
Yes.
Hopefully.
We can.
Okay. One of the concerns I have with the pandemic issue is every time I've looked at data or had a group discussion of it or into a presentation, the impacts seem to be incredibly varied. They vary by line, they vary by company, they vary by market and sector. So I just want to express a caution that having a small group may be helpful for being focused, but having a small group runs the risk of missing certain things, given how varied the actual impacts are. There are some lines that have actually done very well. Auto or motor is one example. Other lines, a lot of what we deal with in the property casualty world is litigation. And in some jurisdictions, we've seen a speed up of things. In some, we've seen a slowdown. In some cases, it depends on the city versus the rural areas. So I just want to put out a caution that you want to make sure that anything that comes out has a sufficiently broad review so that we get the full range of what's going on with pandemic issues rather than an isolated situation. That's it. Thank you.
Yes, Christelle, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I think that's a really good point, and thank you to raise it. And this is something which resonates a lot with the discussion I had with OECD, and especially when they ask us to provide comments on the impact on pandemics on the mortality table, where I have been really careful, saying that it's hard to say it's black and white. And I think our role is really to educate, if I can say that like that, them to better understand on a broader, wider perspective, how is it difficult to have a white and black responses on this. So I thank you a lot to raise that point, because that was my main concern on this point, so on this task force. So thank you, Ralph.
Thank you. I see, of course, our main contributor, Gabor.
Yeah, thank you, Jan. First, I would start with a question. I presume this draft SOI, after considering the comments, would be modified and then would be approved by council, or is it a plan that this is something which council will approve? It's a question to you.
Yeah, I can answer that. So yes, so with the inputs, we've already received some inputs with it being circulated with the agenda, and further inputs that we would hope to receive this year still, that we can look to finalize. We felt it important to expose it to council at this time, given that this is very current and important work, and already we've had these requests as I've mentioned. So yes, it would definitely be the case that this would have to be approved formally by council, and I would certainly hope that can be done before our meeting next May, given the nature of this topic.
Yeah, thank you. I was thinking about that, but just wanted to have a confirmation. I have two comments to the paper which we have received, and one of them is related to the last paragraph of section 1, background. And I already said that at the SPC meeting, for which I'm an observer, is that there is a paragraph saying that the goal is to promote the role of the actuarial profession by doing all this, and I think it's too selfish, and I don't think we should strive for promoting the role of the actuarial profession in the first place, but rather to contribute to the public, and by contributing to the public, it will have a consequential effect of more recognition for actuaries. So I think that paragraph needs to be amended. And the second thing is it's the last paragraph of section 3, purpose of the proposed IA activities, and you, Roseanne, have already touched on. So the last point on this slide, which I see, this SOI proposes that IA activities would be coordinated by a pandemic task force. The draft says created by the SPC, and I would like to say that I don't think the SPC is for such micromanagement issues or operational issues. So such task forces should be created by the executive committee, and the task forces report to the executive committee. So these are my 2 comments, and thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Gabor. Thanks for the input. By the way, I encourage you, if all participants of this meeting, if you have these kind of feedback, please make sure that it will be handed over to us, but it doesn't have to be during this council meeting in detail too much. Otherwise, it takes too much time. But certainly, we appreciate all those comments and inputs, because we need that commitment of all our members. We go now to Juan Carlos from Mexico, Connect. So welcome, Juan Carlos.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Congratulations, Tonya. I think that this is a very important task that we have in front of us, because it's having a lot of impact in every way, as you have mentioned. My comment and my suggestion is that perhaps, besides having internal communications, besides reacting to requests, besides engage and have communicate with supras, I believe that one of the best contributions that we could make is also try to make an effort to communicate and to impact public policies. This means trying to reach governments, because they are the ones that develop public policies, and these public policies should be more integral and more effective if they take into consideration the voices and the suggestions of this kind of part of the society. So I would suggest that we should try to make an effort to go in that direction to impact public policies. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I don't know if that was the general plan, or was that specific to the pandemics? Was that a general comment?
Yeah, it's a comment, a general comment that this kind of efforts should go and impact public policies. And this has to be done through governments, because otherwise, perhaps many of the actions that are taken in different parts of the world don't consider the contributions that groups of thinkers like this IAA have developed. So I think that we should make wider our communication and impact on this kind of efforts.
I will say that one of the themes or consistent topics that was put forth in our discussions with these SBC was the need to be more proactive. And as I put it, instead of joining conversations, starting conversations, and that we are having a broader reach in putting out our information. We do want to be careful that we remain seen as objective and that we are providing information and we're not providing opinions, so to speak, when you get into something that is political and sensitive. However, we do recognize that it is important that we have a broader reach as far as disseminating our information. I am sensitive, and Christelle pointed this out, is that some of our supranationals very much are concerned that we provide objective and scientific information, if you will. So we have to make sure that we are balanced and we are providing our perspective as actuaries. But I do agree with you that it is important that we get our information out very broadly, and I would say proactively as well. So thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Next one is Mike Lombardi of the SOA. Mike?
Yep, thank you. My comments are going to be with respect to the task force, the two being proposed. I know we're not voting on this. These are just drafts. This is the future of the actuary and also the one on pandemic. I think, I share the idea that we're eager to do something to show the outside world how valuable the IA is and how, the actuarial profession can make a difference. And there's nothing wrong with that. I do find, though, that this is very broad. It lacks a certain amount of specificity that I would like to see. In terms of goals, we should have SMART goals, by which I mean they should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And the concerns I have with the SOI, and this is shared with my FMA, the SOA shares this as well. Right now, the way they're written, it's too broad in scope. There's potential duplication of similar effort by FMAs. There's a lack of resource estimates, and the deadlines feel or seem very soft. And, I don't want to go back to why we restructured. Some of the issues that we tried to deal with in restructuring was that the IAA in general was, there were a lot of committees that just lived forever and found new things to do, and we need a bit better governance. So my caution is that both to SPC and to EC eventually is we need to do better in narrowing the scope, coordinating with FMAs, and putting together real deadlines and oversight. So that's my caution. And the reason is I'd like us to produce quality results and products. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks so much, Mike. I really do appreciate that that input, and I think that's certainly something that that we take to heart. I mean, particularly that that last point. I think we need to be very explicit about the scope, and that this work is around coordinating what has been done by FMAs rather than duplicating that work. So it's an opportunity to elevate it. I think you're quite correct that we need to make sure that this has clear deadlines, that this is a time-limited task force. And I think the example that the CRTF has set in this regard in terms of having a very clear work plan, and that once that work plan is executed and completed, that then that that is the end of the task, as it were, until it is reconsidered by council is certainly a more efficient way for us to operate and more consistent with the principles we've adopted in the renewal. So we'll certainly make sure that in finalizing that SOI that those things are tightened up. So thanks for that, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Thomas Behar from France.
Yes. So I will have. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a comment and a question. For the comment, so for instance, actuaries, this pandemic task force is important. It's important that the actuarial voice is heard about pandemic. So we have a clear place where we can play a role to give our opinion or advice about what to learn about the pandemics and to advise and impact supranational. My question is about the place of the pandemic task force in the governance of IAA. I think it was also a question that asked Gabor. I have not heard your answer. Where do you have an opinion where you will place this pandemic task force in the governance of IAA?
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. So just to clarify that then the intention is that this would sit under the executive committee. And that is because there'll be obviously that close relationship with advanced committee, but also because of its important role with the impact function. That's why we felt that it's probably most appropriately cited under the executive committee. And we do have the CRTF as a case study in that regard. So yeah, that's the intention. And I'll make sure that's more explicit in the SOI.
Thank you.
I don't see any hands anymore.
Yeah, Maria.
Oh, Maria. So Maria, go ahead. Yeah. No. So Maria is left. Ibrahim.
Oh, I'm here. Sorry, I just had a difficulty to unmute myself. I apologize. So almost, if you give me still the word, Chairman, can I continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So I very much appreciate the feedback and the initiatives which are going to be started as proposed by the Strategic Planning Committee. From the point of view of Slovak Society of Actuaries, we are very happy to hear that because these topics are resonating in our country. So both climate risk and also the pandemic and the role of actuary here, I think that's very important, especially to navigate the post-pandemic world carefully and to make sure that there are certain risks which are insurable, which are uninsurable, and to make aware decision makers about that. The second point which I would like to make is the task force role of actuary, especially from the IFRS 17 point of view. And because this is our local accounting gap, so obviously we are having a strong interest in this topic as supporters of a finance function or auditors function in performance of these duties. So we would like to encourage the International Actuarial Association to communicate to the stakeholders and to ask them how they want to assure the quality of the implementation of IFRS 17 by all these all insurance companies, auditors, and other stakeholders. We think that the role of actuary is very important and it should be more emphasized by these policymakers. So, as it was mentioned by a colleague from Mexico, I think it is important that governments and standard setters or legislation makers understand this view as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Ibrahim from Lebanon. You raised your hand, but we still don't hear you.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Do you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Yes, I would like to mention regarding the support of the IAA to governments. I don't think this is possible, like Tonia mentioned. However, we should commit ourselves as IAA to support inquiries coming from certain FMAs if they need support, some kind of support with governments. So it shouldn't be the IAA what is after governments, but rather IAA make sure that they can support local FMAs if they need support. On the issue of supranational organizations, I think most of them, I don't want to call names, they have their own agendas. I certainly believe the work of the IAA with the International Accounting Standard Board, that's great. However, the support of the IAA in the past for other organizations have not led to anything but really a waste of money and time, in my opinion. So I think we should rate on certain organizations that will make a difference. And when we have an inquiry from others, although Tonia mentioned being proactive, if we really we have something to say, that we can influence other supranational organizations, we should lay low on that.
Thank you, Ibrahim, and certainly focus is a very important topic. So we are not looking for more activities. We are looking for quality and really impact. So completely agree with you, Ibrahim. Austria, Hartwig again.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the floor. So I will also a little bit contribute to the discussion with the governments, which came from Juan Carlos. I think it's a very important topic that the governments hear to the national FMAs. And what I think that the IAA can do with as a support is there are some supranationals because the governments do not hear to the actuaries in the different countries, do not listen to them. And it is the duty of the national organization of the FMA to get in contact with the government. But the IAA could support with some supranationals. I think, especially of the OECD or of the World Bank, those are supranationals where the governments here listen to the OECD and they listen to the World Bank. And if IAA can support in the way that they say the OECD and the World Bank should push the governments into the direction that they listen to their national FMAs, this would be a really big support for the national FMAs. So my opinion is not to approach those supranationals with special topics, but with the main purpose that they encourage the governments to listen to their national FMAs, the actuarial associations. This would be a very helpful support.
Thank you, Hartwig. Christelle would like to mention something about it.
Yes, and thank you again. And just to clarify that point is like exactly what happens when OECD reaches to ask us some comments related to the impact of the pandemic on the mortality table. And I had a discussion with Pablo Antolin to better understand where is coming from this request and this project proposal, because they are doing project proposals that they are presenting within their members. And just to clarify again, for those who are not familiar with OECD, members of OECD are governments or regulator and supervisor, depending on how mature is a country. So, and the request from the impact on pandemic on mortality table was coming from governments. So for me, that was really important that we speed this process. And sorry, because we worked already on this to provide comments. And so we speed this process to be there and to bring our voice at the international level for the OECD.
Thank you, Christelle. Last one I would suggest, and that is Gabor again. So Gabor.
Thank you. I would just like to respond to Maria. I did have a so-called IFRS 17 coordination task force, which is one of the examples where we created a task force and closed it some time ago. So it was a limited time for existence. And that task force developed IAA Quality Assurance and Governance Initiatives on IFRS 17. And that was issued by the IAA, IA paper. I think it can be found on the website of the IA. And this paper was dispatched to a number of stakeholders. And I think the work of this task force was linked to the work of the relevant task force or working group of the AAE. So by overlapping membership, and so the ideas fertilized each other's. Although the IA principles are not as concrete as the European, because Europe it's much easier in Europe to reach a more concrete conclusions. But still, I think it's an important document, and it's in the same direction as Maria you requested or wanted to see, and it's the same direction as the European initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabor. We noticed that we have quite some, participation in the discussion. So that's a good thing. At the same time, we need to look after the timing of this meeting as well. So what we try to do is within the next, let's say 15, 20 minutes to finish the report of the Strategic Planning Committee. And we already got some comments in advance regarding the future Actuary Task Force statement of intent. Before we even got the whole presentation. So let's go on. Let's start with the presentation. And Jill, you are the one who will be presenting this one. So it's all up to you, Jill.
Great, thank you so much. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jill Hoffman and I represent the Singapore Actuarial Society, and I currently hold that seat for the SPC. So one of the things that we were thinking about was what will be the domain knowledge and the skill set required by actuaries in the future. Rapidly evolving technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and automation create a new future of work. New threats and in parallel, opportunities will continue to arise with emerging risks such as demographic and economic changes, climate-related risk, and pandemics. In addition, the global and local regulatory requirements, such as the environmental, social, and governance, are continuously evolving. The range of the actuarial skill set that is the core of the profession should evolve to enable actuaries to grow. The actuarial profession must ensure that it takes on dynamic business and advisory roles while maintaining the professional approach to all actuarial services. The vision of the IAA is that the actuarial profession is globally recognized as leading experts in risk and financial security, contributing to the well-being of society. One of the IAA's strategic objectives is to support the development of the actuarial profession worldwide and promote actuarial profession and educational standards through member associations. So the IAA must support the development of the actuarial profession and the associations to maintain the relevance of the actuary. And this approach should be strategic rather than reactive. So the future actuary statement of intent and task force that we're proposing has the purpose to effectively manage threats and opportunities. We also want to attract the best candidates to the profession and promote the profession and the role of the actuary. This leads us to the following objectives. We want to inspire a new generation of actuaries, coordinate and facilitate development of actuaries, and create awareness of the contribution actuaries can make at the macro and micro level. Next slide, please. So we have these planned activities that we would present at the Sydney ICA, and I fully take on board with respect to the earlier comments regarding SMART goals, and I 100% agree with that. This is why this is being presented to Council today for discussion, because I would like us in the current group working on this would like to get feedback that we're moving in the right direction before putting together a formal proposal for Council. So the outcomes that we have planned and identified are the following. So one is to develop a risk and opportunity radar. So this would be providing a framework for members to create their own national risk radar. This risk radar would monitor emerging opportunities and challenges for the profession. And this would take about 12 months to complete. With respect to after developing this risk radar, we would do a gap analysis and identify what skill gaps are needed to give direction and add value by facilitating the development and sharing of appropriate continuous education via the members. And I just would like to confirm that when the word members is here on this slide, that's referring to the member associations of the IAA. It's just shortened for PowerPoint purposes. In terms of skill development, this would be working with the assure and advance functions to consolidate and coordinate what different member associations are doing and identify these gaps and foster more appealing and flexible and affordable syllabus education. With that, after we've developed this excellent actuary, we want to promote demand. So promoting demand for the actuaries is engaging with the supranational organizations, listening and learning from other professions, and promoting the actuarial profession at universities with regulators, recruiters, and employers to help promote demand. And again, this would be working and supporting various different FMAs and other task force. And then, of course, developing supply. So this actually would link a bit with respect to what Lisa had presented earlier as well. And again, within the IA, this is not to work in a silo, but to really help coordinate a lot of these activities that are going on, not coordinate, but to make sure that we don't duplicate work and that we work in a coordinated manner. So developing supply, so whether engaging with younger actuaries and special groups activities, we actually had said develop special slots and sections at the ICA and the colloquiums for younger actuaries. So one of the measurable goals that we actually said that we could put in for ourselves is that the actuary is still ranked within the top 5 professions. When I was looking at becoming an actuary many moons ago, actuary was ranked in the top professions, but now we're seeing competition from frankly speaking, professions that have similar skill sets as us, such as data scientists, right? So we're all mathies at the end of the day. So how can we make sure that we get that not everyone goes to data scientists, but we're able to attract actuaries as there. So I'm happy to take questions. Again, this is the forum is for feedback on if we're heading in the right direction. Does anything resonate with you? And if there's changes that would be needed in terms of like details and wordsmithing, we can take that offline and I'll take that feedback via email or separate discussions. So with that, I'm happy to take questions, but I don't know who asked first, so I'll have Jan handle that.
Thank you, Jill. And certainly we need feedback and input on the plans we are having on this topic. But I would like to limit it at this point in time in this meeting only to 3. I see 2 hands. And for the rest of the input, certainly we will coordinate something outside the council meeting to make sure that everyone is able to give their appropriate comments. And as Austria already mentioned, this presentation is only available as of now. So certainly some other members simply need to have some time to give the right reflection. So I see 3 hands perfectly, and the first one is Ralph.
Thank you, Jan. The Casualty Actuarial Society has concerns with the part of what is drafted currently, because among the action plans, it has this group surveying academics, actuaries, and others. That would duplicate work that's already being done by the Casualty Actuarial Society. And the last thing we want to do is have 2 different actuarial associations talk to the same people. So it needs to be recognition that this is working through the FMAs, where the FMAs already do parts of this work. That plus I did notice again the same issue raised by earlier speakers on the other task force about who creates it, whether it's the SBC or the EC.
That's true. And I actually don't know that answer. So that's a question that's new to me. And certainly we do not want to duplicate any work. So if FMAs are already doing this work, then yes, let's leverage off of it. What we do want to make sure though is that we get a worldwide view. So not just from one region. So we would reach out to a number of FMAs to have a diversity of views. But thank you very much, Ralph.
Thank you, Ralph. Would you like to say something?
I just want to clarify that my view of how we operate with SBC versus EC, and we'll talk about this in another aspect in just shortly, is that the SBC is developing strategy and the EC is executing strategy. So when it comes to selecting a strategic initiative, that will be under the guidance of SBC. And the execution, such as selecting a task force to work on it and to come up with work plans that are specific and such, that would be under the advisement of EC. So all of this has to be coordinated, and we're working our way through this to understand how we operate as a renewed association. But we do want EC to be focused on execution and SPC to be focused on a high level. This may not be clear. We'll make sure this is clarified when you get revised versions of these statements of intent. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya.
Ibrahim.
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you, Jill, for your remarks. I have a problem, and I've been having this problem for many, many years, whereby we are quoting the actuarial profession as in the top earners, and that using this index to attract young actuaries. I think there should be promotion by the actuarial profession, that the profession is very interesting profession. It's not a matter of earning money. I don't think we want just people that are entering the profession because it's a good earning, it is a good financially rewarding profession. The world is changing. Creativity is very important. We are missing out on a very creative people because they don't think they fit in the profession. They think we are geeks. They don't think that we are really creative, interesting people. I think the profession should concentrate to promote the actuarial profession as very interesting profession. For me, I am very interested in the profession. It's a very stimulating profession. However, everybody keep talking about rewarding, financially rewarding. And this is, I hope you can table this remark.
I never said it was in the top 5 in terms of earning. This is referencing, I don't know the name of the survey right now, but the surveys that I've seen in the past from, I believe it's from the US with respect to the top professions. And it takes into account a number of different things, including work-life balance, which as a student, we always had a bit of a giggle about. But certainly it was never meant to emphasize earnings. And I don't believe that, and I'll make sure that it doesn't imply that. Gianpaolo?
Good morning to everyone. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
And, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate very much all the efforts of the CPC. I follow all the works as observer. And particularly, we agree totally about the strategic plan, the principle and the goals illustrated by Tonya, and also this document about the future of actuary. As I said yesterday, I found all the questions my association faced in the recent past today, and the question we must face for the future. We organize 1, 2 already strategic plans, and we are at the 3rd, so I can understand exactly what a plan means. And my suggestion is only one, that the future of actuary could be included absolutely inside the strategic plan, because I see the concrete application of this plan. So my suggestion is to include, or if you want, don't include, to consider it as a part of the general strategic plan and to develop in parallel. Again, I want to say only a word about the problem of government, because we face this problem also in my country. We started to propose politicians and government some questions, for instance, about pension, welfare, motor insurance, and recently we propose a multi-professional task force about systemic risk. And I want to say that if the IAA is able to further support this proposal towards the government, probably we have some additional chance to have some success. So I think that it is important. I say this only because I take this opportunity to thank you very much, IAA, for the support to our recent Congress in November in Rome. It was very appreciated by my colleagues. I received the positive feedback from my colleagues and also from the institutional politicians and also by press about this. And so it means that the support, I think, was very over the simple speeches, sorry, but it was very deepened, were very strong, and I was very happy for this. I thank you again for this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gianpaolo. I think we need to move on to the next topic, but we are very pleased with your input, Gianpaolo, because it simply proves that we are on the right track and that we really can make a contribution together. So the next topic, also related to SPC, is the emerging important topics process, and that is something where Tonya would like to mention something.
I would indeed. Thank you, Jan. And I will say that please pay attention, because this is leading to where we are going to ask you to vote, or Jan will be asking you to vote. The emerging important topics process may be something that some of you did not expect to become something that the SBC is focused on. But an association structure is not reflected in an organization's chart, but it's reflected in how it actually functions. And what we're trying to do is to make sure that we're functioning in the spirit of how we did our renewal. To that regard, we created a strategic planning committee. We still have an executive committee, and we're making sure that as topics emerge that need to be addressed or could be addressed by the IEA, that we have the right group evaluating that, and if appropriate, moving it forward. We've had two issues, I believe it was one last year and one this year, that have come up where it was not clear at all if it was a topic that should be debated by SBC or simply handled by the executive committee. As a result of that, what we're presenting to you today is a process that we are informally following at this point, but we want to make sure that we have confirmation and, even more important, understanding from Council and the rest of the IEA and its supporting entities of how we address these emerging topics. So an emerging topic is something that is not administrative. It is not something that simply the Secretariat can handle, but things that might need to be addressed by one of our entities, such as the Education Committee, the Professionalism Committee, a special initiative, etc. The flow chart to the right shows what we are proposing as that process, where the staff will often be the first to become aware of some sort of important issue. If it is administrative in any nature or operational, or however you want to say, if it is a small matter, they will certainly address it. But if it is important, they will advance it to the officers. Sometimes the officers get information directly from a representative from an FMA, for example. However the officers get it, the officers will be the front line as far as deciding where these topics will be rooted. They'll look at whether it's a sensitive matter. In other words, will FMAs have different opinions or passionate opinions on it? Will it have an impact on the organization? And is it something that might require a lot of work? Thinking back to one of our council representatives' comments that we need to be mindful that we don't enter into long engagements and tasks that seem to never end. Based on those different criteria, they will route this to either the Strategic Planning Committee, if they feel it is strategic or sensitive, and let the Strategic Planning Committee decide themselves if they want to address it or not. If they decide to address it, they will do so. They will debate it and decide how to move it forward or to not move it forward. If they decide it is not strategic or sensitive or something they want to spend their time with, then they can put it back to the officers, who will route it to either the executive committee or what other entity is appropriate. So the big important thing to get out of this is that the officers are necessarily doing a quick, a timely job of getting the issues to where they think is the most appropriate spot. However, it is SBC that decides what SBC will take up. And if on the next slide, you'll see, that there is a checks and balances, so that if someone disagrees with how the officers decide to put forward a topic to SBC or not, there will be communications through minutes of meetings, etc., that will let you know what decisions were made. And any FMA representative or member of SBC can certainly disagree and have a discussion with the chair of SBC to see if it should have instead gone to SBC itself. And if that is the case, either they will settle that the decision was appropriate to begin with, or there is disagreement and it will go to SBC. So this is what we're proposing to you. It's a little bit abbreviated, but hopefully thorough enough for you to make a decision on. I'll open it up. I'll pass it over to Jan to walk us through the approval process.
Thank you, Tonya. But before doing so, I really would like to thank the presenters for the last topic. So Tonya, thank you. Roseanne, thank you. Jill, thank you very much. And Christelle as well. So those contributions are really appreciated and necessary. So the motion which we have right now is that Council ratify the SPC's recommendation on the process of handling emerging important topics as presented. So do we have a mover? And do we have a seconder? And do you know the names already, Mathieu?
Juan Carlos raised his hand. So Juan Carlos, I hope it wasn't to post a question before, but I'm assuming you're moving the motion.
Yeah. And do we have a seconder?
Yeah.
I will. Yeah, okay, Jacques.
Okay, Jacques. So it's open for comments or questions, and questions, not or, and. So, Shashini, you have a question.
Hi, thank you. So I'm Shashini from the Actuarial Association of Sri Lanka. Can we know what the time frame for this process is? And if it's a lengthy one, is there a fast track process to handle any time sensitive issues?
That is a great question. The reason the officers were put in that position of making the decision is because they meet weekly or bi-weekly, but very often are able to move quickly. If you have a very time-sensitive topic, go directly to the president, I would say, or any of the officers, and they will be able to get that moving quickly and make a decision on moving it forward. So it is trying to accommodate the need for a quick reaction when appropriate.
Okay.
So I don't see any other hands. So let's go to the poll. So who is in favor of this motion? Yeah. So we need a simple majority. I see we already have that. And can you show it to all of us? So the motion has been approved. Thank you very much. Now we move on to the last two motions related to education this time. And I guess I need to hand it over to?
Yes, to me.
To you?
Yeah.
Tonya again?
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah,
like
and
a
I do
immediately past president, you really would like to be involved.
Okay. All right, on the education, this is a matter that has had a lot of work done in 2020 when Gabor was chairing the Strategic Planning Committee. And it was discussed quite a bit and had a lot of work done. There were some matters that had a straw poll that indicated strong, if not unanimous support. And what we wanted to do, there were actually 3 different items, 2 of which we're going to vote on today, related to education. And we want to move forward 2 of the 3 that we feel just need to be behind us, reflected in our statutes and regulations. And the 3rd, which is regarding guidelines, we'll hold back until we have more decisions and understanding and recommendations from SBC. So what you have here are just 2 simple, what we feel are pretty non-controversial, we hope, recommended changes to the regulations and the statutes. The guidelines will be looked at next year as we further evaluate this under SBC. Under the statutes, it's simply removing an outdated reference to fully qualified actuaries, which does not have context anymore under IAA. And in the internal regulations, a similar change, as well as ensuring that FMAs designate a category membership that's reserved for actuaries who have completed an education program compliant with the guidelines and the syllabus. Now, again, the guidelines are not completely consistent, but we did not want to offer any suggested edits because they will simply have to be edited or modified again next year as we come to a better understanding and agreement on the details of the guidelines. So the Education Committee is working on just that, and we are hoping to have something in the first quarter of next year for SBC to evaluate under Jan's guidance, and we'll be back to council in due course on that. With that, Jan, I think I can turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Tonya. So we have the next motion that on the recommendation of the SPC, Council approved the revisions to the statutes as presented. Do we have a mover? Gabor, I see. Do we have a seconder? That is Chart. That's a pretty Fries name, so I like it. So, and Fries, that's part of the Netherlands, for the ones who don't know where Friesland lays. So, any comments or suggestions, questions? I don't see any, so let's start the poll. Who is in favor of this motion? Okay, so we have a 4/5 majority. So I see even 100% voted yes. So thank you very much. And now we have the second motion. Yep. And the second motion is that on the recommendation of the SPC, Council approve the revisions to the internal regulations as presented. Do we have a mover? Gabor again. Do we have a seconder?
Juan Carlos.
Juan Carlos. Great. So now it's open for comments or questions. I don't see any. So, and start the poll. Okay, thank you very much. So we needed to have 80% majority for this vote. So and for this motion, and this motion has been approved. Thank you very much. And before moving on, I would like to give floor again to Tonya.
Yeah, so this concludes the report of the SBC, and Jan already thanked the leaders of our proposed initiative task force, but I want to thank them again and also thank all of the SBC for their patience and their hard work this year and moving things forward. I'm very much excited about what we're going to do next year as we get our strategic plan in place. So again, thank you everyone. And just keep in mind that the essence of strategy is choosing what not to do. So I think we have our eye on that based on the comments with our two strategic initiatives that we're hoping to propose, but as well as our strategic plan. So thank you, Jan. I don't know if we want to have time for any further questions, but that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Tonya. Is there a really emerging question at this moment? No. Then I suggest we take a break. And originally it was planned for 30 minutes, but given the fact that it really took some time, My suggestion is that we come back within 20 minutes. So thank you very much and see you soon.
So the coffee event.